I agreed to marry a wealthy stranger to save my family. On our wedding night, he handed me a key and said, "There's one door you must never open." But when he left for a business trip, my curiosity got the best of me. Inside, I found a locked diary with my name on it, written years before I was born. My blood ran cold as I read the first line, "She will be mine, no matter what it takes." Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. I never imagined I'd be sharing this, but recent events have left me shaken, and I need to get this off my chest. My name is Anna, and I'm 28 years old, living in Chicago. A few months ago, my family's world turned upside down. My father's business, a small but once thriving construction company, collapsed due to a series of bad investments and an economic downturn. Debts piled up rapidly, and we were on the brink of losing our home, the house I grew up in, filled with memories of better times. During this tumultuous period, an unexpected figure entered our lives. Richard Davenport, a wealthy businessman known for his real estate ventures across Chicago, approached my father with a proposition. I had heard of Richard. He was a prominent figure in the city's elite circles, often featured in business magazines. He was in his late 40s, distinguished, and carried an air of authority. His offer was startling. He wanted to marry me. In return, he would settle all our debts and ensure my family's financial stability. I was taken aback. Marry a man I barely knew? The idea seemed preposterous. Yet, as I looked around at my parents, their faces etched with worry and despair, I felt an overwhelming sense of duty. After countless sleepless nights and tearful discussions, I agreed. It felt like the only way to save my family from financial ruin. The wedding was a grand affair, held at Richard's sprawling estate on the outskirts of Chicago. The mansion was an architectural marvel, reminiscent of the Gilded Age, with towering columns and expansive gardens. Guests from high society attended, their laughter and chatter echoing through the grand halls. Despite the opulence, I felt like an outsider, a pawn in a game I didn't understand. After the ceremony, I moved into Richard's mansion. The house was vast, with countless rooms, each adorned with antique furniture and paintings that seemed to watch my every move. The corridors were long and winding, and it was easy to get lost. The staff was courteous but maintained a professional distance, adding to my sense of isolation. On our wedding night, as we stood in the dimly lit master bedroom, Richard handed me a single, ornate key. It was old-fashioned, made of brass, and had intricate engravings. He looked at me with a serious expression. "You have free reign of the house," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Explore as you wish, but there's one room you must never enter. It's at the end of the West Wing corridor." His words sent a shiver down my spine. Why would he forbid me from one room? What was behind that door? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and slipped the key into my pocket. Days turned into weeks. Richard was often away on business trips, leaving me alone in the vast mansion. I tried to keep myself occupied, reading in the expansive library, strolling through the gardens, or attempting to befriend the staff, who remained politely distant. Yet, no matter what I did, my thoughts kept drifting back to the forbidden door. The West Wing was different from the rest of the house. It felt colder, less lived in. The corridor leading to the mysterious door was lined with portraits of stern-looking ancestors, their eyes seeming to follow me as I walked by. The door itself was unremarkable, plain, wooden, with a simple brass handle. But its very ordinariness made it all the more intriguing. One evening, after Richard had left for another of his trips, the curiosity became unbearable. The house was enveloped in silence, the kind that presses down on you, amplifying every creak and whisper. I retrieved the key from my jewelry box, its weight heavier than I remembered. With a deep breath, I made my way to the West Wing. The corridor seemed longer that night, the shadows deeper. As I approached the door, my heart pounded so loudly I feared it might wake the entire house. I hesitated, the key poised at the lock. Was I making a mistake? But the need to know overpowered my fear. I inserted the key, turned it, and with a soft click, the door creaked open. The room was modest compared to the rest of the mansion. A simple bed with a faded quilt, a wooden desk cluttered with papers, and a bookshelf filled with worn volumes. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and something else, something metallic. But what caught my attention was the diary resting atop the desk. Its leather cover was cracked with age, and the pages were yellowed. Drawn to it, I sat down and opened it. My breath caught in my throat as I read the first page. There, in elegant script, was my name, Anna. But the date beneath it was from decades ago, long before I was born. Confused, I flipped through the entries. The diary belonged to a man named Henry Davenport, Richard's father. The entry spoke of his life, his business dealings, and then, repeatedly, of a woman named Evelyn. He wrote about her beauty, her grace, and his deep admiration for her. As I continued reading, admiration turned into obsession. One entry stood out, sending a chill down my spine: "She will be mine, no matter what it takes." The words were underlined, the ink darker, as if pressed with more force. I stared at that line, "She will be mine, no matter what it takes," for a long time. My fingers trembled as I turned the pages, and my mouth felt dry. Each entry after that got darker. Henry wrote about following Evelyn. Watching her when she didn't know. Leaving her gifts. Showing up near her job. He believed they were meant to be. But Evelyn was my mother. That's when everything inside me dropped. That was the last page. The rest of the diary was blank. I sat there frozen. That's when I heard the door behind me creak and slam shut. I jumped to my feet. My stomach dropped. I rushed to the door and twisted the handle. It didn't move. I banged on it, yelling, "Hello? Is anyone there?" No answer. The air in the room suddenly felt thick. Like it was pressing in on me. I felt trapped. I started to panic. The silence outside was deafening. And then I heard footsteps. Slow. Steady. Coming down the hall. "Richard?" I shouted. "It's Anna." The door stuck. The footsteps stopped. Then the doorknob turned. The door opened slowly, and Richard stood there. But his face looked different. Blank. Cold. Like I didn't recognize him. "You read it," he said. Not a question. Just a fact. I nodded, trying to speak, but nothing came out. He stepped aside. "Come out." I hesitated. Everything about him felt off. Like a switch had flipped. We walked in silence to the grand living room. He sat down in a large leather chair and gestured for me to sit across from him. The fire crackled behind us, casting long shadows on the floor. "I suppose you have questions," he said, folding his hands. I couldn't hold it in. Why was there a diary written by your father about my mother? Why did you want to marry me? He didn't flinch. "My father loved your mother." Or, at least, he thought he did. He was intense. Possessive. When she chose someone else, it broke him. For years, he kept tabs on her. Quietly. From a distance. He told me stories about her when I was a boy. How beautiful she was. How kind. How she was stolen from him. My hands clenched in my lap. That's not love. That's stalking. He tilted his head slightly. I know. I didn't understand it fully then. But I do now. I stared at him. So you married me because you wanted to finish what he started? No, he said, too quickly. At first, yes. I thought maybe it was fate. Maybe it was a way to give his story a different ending. To make things right. You were Evelyn's daughter. You looked like her. It felt connected. My stomach turned. That's sick. He looked at me with something like shame. Or regret. But then I got to know you. And I realized you weren't her. You were your own person. Stronger. Smarter. Then why keep the diary? Why keep that room locked? I couldn't let go of it. Of him. That part of the past. I didn't think you'd ever go in there. I stood up, my legs shaky. You should have burned it. He didn't answer. That night, I didn't sleep. I locked the door to my room and kept a chair wedged under the handle. I didn't know what scared me more, Richard, or the possibility that I didn't know what he was capable of. The next morning, he was gone. No note. No call. Nothing. The staff didn't know where he went. Days passed. I tried to contact him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. His office said he was on leave. But no one knew why. Or where. One night, a week later, I got a call. The number was blocked. When I answered, there was just breathing. I hung up. It called again the next night. Same thing. Just breathing. Slow. Heavy. Not a word. I started feeling watched. At the grocery store. Walking to my car. Lights flickering in the hallway of the mansion. I asked the staff, but they said everything seemed normal. Then one morning, I found something on my bed. The green bracelet. My mother's bracelet. The one she never let out of her sight. I hadn't told anyone about it. I didn't bring it to the mansion. It shouldn't have been there. The next page of this story only gets darker. I held the bracelet in my hand for a long time, just staring at it. The metal was cold, the green stone in the center still chipped in the same place it always was. I remembered my mom telling me once that she got it from someone who wouldn't stop bothering her back when she worked at the cafe. She never gave details, just said she didn't want to think about it. She never wore it, just kept it buried in the bottom drawer of her vanity. I hadn't seen it in years. I called my mom that night. I didn't tell her everything, not yet. I just asked if she still had the bracelet. She went quiet on the phone. Why are you asking about that? Just wondering, I said, trying to sound casual. I thought I saw something that looked like it. She sighed. I threw it away years ago. I didn't want it in the house. But what if someone kept it? She paused again. Why are you really asking, Anna? I hesitated. Did you ever know a man named Henry Davenport? There was silence. Then a long exhale. Where did you hear that name? I told her, slowly, that I had seen it written somewhere. I didn't mention the diary, or Richard. She got very quiet, then said, "Don't trust anyone with that last name. Do you hear me?" Before I could ask more, she said she had to go and hung up. I didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, a letter arrived at the mansion. It had no return address. Just my name, in the same handwriting I'd seen in the diary. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. All it said was, "You were always meant to be here." No signature. That's when I realized, I wasn't just being watched. Someone had been in the house. My room. I confronted the head of the house staff. I asked about cameras, security, anything. He looked uncomfortable, then told me something I wasn't ready to hear. Mr. Davenport had the house rewired 3 months ago. He installed hidden cameras. Most of the staff didn't know. I only found out because the electrician slipped and said something. I felt sick. Where are the cameras? He shrugged, uneasy. I don't know. Probably everywhere. I locked myself in the study and started digging through Richard's files. He had left no computers. Just papers, neatly organized in cabinets. I found blueprints of the house. Marked in red ink were several small symbols in certain rooms: my bedroom, the bathroom, the library, the west wing. There was one room I hadn't thought about. The cellar. I'd never been down there. It was just a locked door near the kitchen, and I had assumed it was for storage. That night, I waited until everyone was asleep. I took a flashlight and the brass key that had opened the West Wing room, just in case. The key fit the cellar door. The stairs creaked beneath me as I walked down. It was cold. Damp. The air felt wrong, like it had been trapped for years. The cellar was huge. But it wasn't storage. There were shelves filled with journals, videotapes, labeled boxes. I picked up one of the boxes. Inside were old photographs. My mother. In her 20s. Walking down the street. Sitting at the cafe. Through windows. At night. Dozens of them. I started to shake. Then I saw a newer photo. Me. Walking out of my apartment before the wedding. Sitting at the park with a friend. At the salon. All recent. All taken from a distance. I picked up one of the videotapes. It was labeled Anna, First Night. I didn't want to know. But I had to. There was an old TV on a table in the corner. I found the right cables, plugged it in, and pressed play. It was a recording of my first night in the mansion. The camera was hidden in the chandelier above the bed. The angle looked down on me as I unpacked, sat on the bed, then went to the bathroom. He had watched everything. I felt dizzy. I was about to turn it off when I saw something else. The screen flickered, then cut to footage of Richard. Sitting in a dark room. Talking to someone off camera. She'll stay. She doesn't know yet. But she will. A voice responded. A man, older, with a raspy tone. She has her mother's blood. Be careful. Richard nodded slowly. She's already part of this. Then it hit me. That voice. It wasn't a recording from the past. It was recent. Very recent. Henry Davenport was supposed to be dead. That's what everyone said. But what if he wasn't? What if he never died? What if he was still watching, still waiting? I ran out of the cellar. I locked the door behind me and stuffed the key deep in a drawer. I wanted to leave. But when I went to grab my phone, it was gone. So was my bag. My car keys. Everything had vanished. And on my bedroom mirror, written in red lipstick, "Now you know." I stared at the mirror, the words "now you know" burning into my brain. I wiped the lipstick off with a trembling hand, but the message still felt etched into my mind. I had to get out. Now. I rushed to the front door, but it wouldn't open. Not jammed. Not locked. Just dead. No sound when I turned the knob. The electronic security panel blinked, offline. I checked the windows. Every one was bolted shut or reinforced. The mansion had turned into a trap. The staff? Gone. No footsteps, no voices, not even background noise. Then the lights went out. Only the faint glow from the fireplace remained. Anna. The voice came from behind me. I turned, slowly. Richard stood at the base of the staircase, barely lit by the fire. His face was calm, eerily calm. "I told you not to open that door," he said. My voice cracked. "You lied to me. About everything." He stepped closer, hands raised slightly. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you the whole truth." "Your father? He's alive, isn't he?" Richard's jaw tensed. "He was supposed to be dead. He faked it. Disappeared for years. I didn't know until after the wedding." My heart pounded. "He's been here. In this house." "Yes," Richard admitted. "He came back. He wanted to see you." I backed away. "You let him?" "I thought I could control him." His voice cracked, suddenly wild. "I thought if I gave him something. If I let him be close, he'd stop. That he'd finally let go of the past." "You're insane," I whispered. "You used me. You used my family's suffering. You made me believe this marriage was about saving us, but it was about him. About his obsession. Richard's hands shook now. I didn't expect to care about you. I thought I was just fulfilling his final wish. But when I got to know you, it changed. I tried to protect you. I laughed bitterly. You call this protection? Hidden cameras? Locked doors? A diary of a stalker in your house? He's still controlling you, just like he tried to control my mom. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the hallway behind us. I turned. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Old. Thin. Hollow-eyed. Henry Davenport. My blood froze. His voice was low and calm. You're even more beautiful in person, Anna. Just like Evelyn. I stepped back. Don't come near me. I waited a long time for this, he said, taking another step forward. She ran from me. But fate brought you here. You're sick, I spat. He smiled, slow and crooked. Maybe. But I knew you'd come. I told Richard. I planned this for years. Richard looked sick now, eyes wide. You said it would be over after the wedding. I lied, Henry said simply. You always were easy to manipulate. Then everything happened at once. Richard lunged toward his father. Get away from her. Henry pulled something from his coat, a syringe. I screamed. They struggled. Richard tried to wrestle it from him, but Henry was quicker than he looked. The syringe jabbed into Richard's shoulder. He gasped, stumbled back, and collapsed to the floor. I ran to him. Richard. Henry loomed over us, eyes glassy. He was weak. Just like your father. Couldn't fight for what he wanted. Sirens. Suddenly, out of nowhere. Red and blue lights flashed through the stained glass windows. The front door burst open. Police stormed in, yelling. Henry raised his hands, smiling. I told you she would be mine. They tackled him to the ground. One officer knelt beside Richard and checked his pulse. He's alive. Call an ambulance. Another helped me up. Ma'am, are you hurt? I shook my head, dazed. Not physically. Richard was taken to the hospital. The drug Henry used was strong, but not fatal. He recovered within a few days. Henry was arrested on multiple charges: stalking, unlawful surveillance, attempted poisoning, and more. His obsession had finally turned public, splashed across the news like a twisted soap opera. My mother broke down when she saw the news. She told me the full story. Henry had stalked her for years, left her notes, made threats. My father had tried to file police reports, but Henry had money, lawyers, and power. Eventually, they moved, changed numbers. She thought it was over when she heard he died. We were all wrong. Richard tried to apologize from his hospital bed. I didn't know how deep it went, he said, eyes tired. I thought I could fix it by marrying you. I thought I could give you what your family needed, and keep him quiet. I thought I could make it right. You didn't, I said. You made it worse. He nodded, not defending himself. I deserve that. I don't hate you, I said, after a long silence. But I can't ever trust you again. He just closed his eyes. It's been 3 months. I moved out of that mansion the same day Henry was arrested. I stayed with friends until I found a place of my own. I cut ties with Richard. He wired my family the money he promised, no strings attached. Maybe that was his guilt speaking. I didn't ask. Sometimes I still feel like I'm being watched. I check the locks 3 times before I go to bed. I flinch when I hear footsteps behind me. But I'm free. Free from the house. Free from the lies. Free from someone else's twisted legacy. What did I learn? That love is not ownership. That obsession can wear the mask of devotion. That sometimes, the past doesn't stay buried. It waits, patiently, until you open the wrong door. And now? Now I walk with the door shut behind me. But I always check twice. Just in case,